On this episode, I remixed my most popular episode from last year alongside my co-host for our new podcast called Mixtape Therapy, available exclusively on Spotify. My guest is Hannah, and she graciously returns after enduring my nonstop chatter in season 3. Hannah is a master at aiding people, which I consider her superpower. And unlike my usual role of being a listener, I find myself no match for her expertise. So I talk about hypnotherapy, ethical non-monogamy, the dynamics of runners and chasers, not drinking is the new gluten-free, intentions behind social media posts, and the notion that empathy is more rebellious than the middle finger. Hannah, being the master she is, aids me in processing it all. Let's jump in. Hey everybody, welcome to the Modern Good Podcast, and this is a remix. Before I get started, all my regular shout outs, Joe Andrade Media does all my cool pictures on Instagram. Wish Pocket, that's Jason, he does the audio. He's fantastic, thank you Jason. No Names Originals, that's my guy Jaron, he's in North Carolina, supporting local North Carolina artists. Go Bubble app, that's a detailing service to your home, and if you put in the promo code GoModerate, you get a discount. Lone Sun Decor, that's my guy Peyton. He does cool ass art on wood. Just go art on your wood. It's cool.
He's amazing.
It's amazing. And then last but not least, Shiner Saloon. So all the booze and beverages that kind of come on the podcast, David, aka Cupcake, takes care of that for me. So thanks, Cup. I appreciate it. Subscribe if you're on YouTube. Follow on Apple and Spotify. And as I said, this is a remix. Hannah.
Yes.
Hanny Choppa Dog.
Hannah Choppa Dog, I believe is my name.
Yeah. So how you been?
I've been amazing.
Yeah.
Has it been a full year since I saw you?
Probably something like that.
I think it has been.
Yeah. Well, I think I said that whenever or before we started that when you left, I was like, she's never coming back because I just talked too much.
No.
And then we tried to set some stuff, and you had some stuff you had to take care of or whatever. And so then now we're here. But I'm glad it happened now, because then I would have recorded you for season 3, but you're on season 4 with like the new setup and everything. Yeah, fantastic. You know what I mean?
Good
like
vibes.
your grandmother's record cabinet right there. It's sweet. You know. I would like to start with do your quick shout outs for all your stuff real quick.
Oh God. Well, I'm not on Instagram, but I will probably be back there. So if I get back on it, it's into.the.abliss, ABLISS. And you can also find me at intotheabliss.com. That is my website for coaching and other things.
And you do coaching?
I do coaching. I'm a therapist, although I don't know if you'd want me as your therapist after seeing whatever shenanigans we're going to talk about today, but there, if you want, you can find me online.
And then you're a hypnotherapist.
I do some hypnotherapy and just some alternative. My coaching is really where I do more of my alternative stuff. So kind of hypnotherapy, NLP. We get a little bit funkier and jazzier outside the box. We can't call it therapy legally, but it is. I hope that it is helpful.
Look, when you talk to your girlfriends about what an asshole your boyfriend is, it's therapy.
For sure.
Probably not good therapy, but
get a therapist and don't do that to your friends.
Yeah. Give your girlfriends a break. They're tired of it already. All right, so I had a question, but you just said something, so I have a different question.
Okay, great.
Okay, so I just started reading a book about NLP.
No way. Which one?
It's like the introduction to NLP or something like that.
Very nice.
Which after reading it, I was like, man, I could have done without the introduction. I probably just could have gone to a straight book about NLP.
Yeah.
Because it's in a very storied form.
Mm-hmm.
But just give me I don't know, some highlights, 5 things. Just talk a little about what NLP is, and then maybe a couple of things it can really do for people to help them. Because I'm starting to get the thing, but I would like to hear it from you.
For sure. I also have a huge disclaimer about NLP, actually, which is a new development since our last chat, which is maybe too much of a rabbit hole. But before I go down that rabbit hole, I will give you, sort of kind of the basics about what NLP is. It's developed by two guys. One was a computer programmer and one was a linguist. And they were really trying to codify what makes for really great communication. So they're trying to break it down into these principles of how do really great people, it started out with therapists, but then it went on to business people, salespeople. How do people who are experts in their field where communication is important do what they do? How are they so successful in being able to communicate? And they actually interviewed a bunch of masters in their fields, but one was Virginia Satir, who is a couples therapist. Interestingly, I'm also a couples therapist. But she had one of the highest success rates of any couples therapist. If you know anything about couples therapy, it's dicey. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's like about a 50-50 kind of efficacy rate, which is not great. So they wanted to interview this woman and figure out, why is she able to be so successful? How is she getting to people? How is she getting inside their heads? And so they found these patterns in her language. And without going into too much detail, they found several patterns in language that highly successful people were able to use in order to get people to change their minds, whether that was about changing the way they show up in their relationships or whether that was convincing people to buy something. So that is the basis of NLP. And then they came up with all these different kind of language-based principles in order to get ideally you and anyone that you want to help to change their mind in ways that are going to serve them best. NLP is not super studied, as in I don't believe it has been scientifically validated in any kind of significant way. The anecdotal evidence for it is pretty good. But NLP is interesting. I think what is interesting about it is that the men who developed it are not therapists and are not people who work in the field of mental health. NLP has also been famously twisted to, for lack of a better word, this is an unscientific term, but for lack of a better word, to brainwash people. So a famous example of that is the cult NXIVM, which was a personal development cult. We know it now as a sex cult that branded women, but prior to that, it was a personal development program that seemed, very above board. And ironically, a lot of the principles that they use are perfectly legitimate, or at least based in legitimate modalities and methods. And so it did actually end up helping a lot of people. But for the people that got deeply involved in the organization, it really ruined their lives. So NLP, and you could say that honestly about any kind of therapeutic modality or something that really gets deep into the human mind, has the potential to also be dangerous. That is not what you asked for, but that's just my little wormhole that I've been going down.
I'm just going to go with you.
Yep.
Okay. Have you read the book, The Power of the 48 Laws?
No.
The 48 Laws of Power?
No.
Okay. You need to read that book.
Who's that by?
I don't remember.
Is it the guy that wrote The Art of Seduction?
The Game, Neil Strauss?
Not that guy. He's another guy.
Anyways.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm like, I don't know, I'm 15 of them in or something like that. Right. And so this is what I feel like so far.
Yes.
All of it makes sense.
Yes.
Okay. But we could argue that these ideas in the hands of the wrong person would be used in a very shitty way.
Yeah. Same with hypnotherapy. That's
sure.
A famous
And when I
example.
think about NLP, and I think like is using that cult as like an example, right? I think about that. I really think a lot of people really benefited from a lot of the things they did in there. It's just unfortunate that there was a something in there that was bad.
Yep.
And infiltrated like that.
Yes.
So my question is like, is that the fault of NLP, or is that the fault of the practicer of NLP, or who he was as maybe a narcissist, or does that make sense?
Totally.
Because let me just end with this, and then you can tell me what you think. Because NLP if I'm getting this right, part of the idea is just like, it's like positive talk too, right?
Yes.
Like what you put out in the world and what you say matters to you and the people around you. So if you can word things in a positive way instead of a negative way, that's a net positive for the person that's receiving it and yourself, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I have to cough, so cut this out. That was what I was trying to get you to pause for.
Sorry.
No worries. Yes. And I think I'm going to say something that I don't have a ton of perfectly well thought out evidence for. I'm just going to kind of speak off the cuff here on NLP. I do, as a modality, I do associate it a lot more with the realm of life coaching and other non-clinical interventions. You wouldn't see a therapist usually. I'm sure there are a few, but you wouldn't see a therapist really touting NLP per se. So it is a little bit more on the fringes of treatment, if you want to call it treatment. It's not really in the scientifically validated healthcare arena. I'd see that more with life coaches, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Of course, you and I are both life coaches, so I don't want to talk down on coaches, but in general, that field is just a lot less regulated, it's a thing, right? If things aren't regulated, a lot of concepts are more likely to be misused or inflated, like their efficacy could be inflated. So long story short, we just don't know like how helpful NLP is exactly. But it's a fun thing. It's a cool thing to do. And people really do report, at least the people that I've worked with whom I've used NLP have benefited from it.
I look at it as like, especially like, it's really easy when I'm texting, right? Like when I send a text message to somebody, we'll say they're canceling me for something or whatever. Like I could send any message I want to, but I always choose to go like, kind of like, hey, like, like no worries. Like, what I mean? Like things happen. That's fine, blah, blah. Like, and just go like, that grace that I'm showing that person in that moment is a positive thing for them. Cause like, they're already having to cancel. And if they genuinely have something to do or something's come up or whatever, like what is it good as a do to make them feel like shit on top of it? And so I guess that's not NLP, but like, that's the way when I read stuff about it, that's the way I kind of think of it. I think of it as like what I say and do and how I approach people, how I bring myself to the day and the words I use matter. They don't matter. But on this real weird subconscious level, they maybe do matter based on what that person's experiences are around that word. Like, like the idea that like, if somebody, like when you ask them to do something, they're like, okay. Or like, whatever. And then you text them like, hey, do you want to go to this movie? And they're like, okay. In your mind, you read that message as, okay. You're like, and so then you're like, well, do you not want to go?
Yeah.
But they didn't say anything. They're just saying, okay.
For sure.
And so like, if the way you answer someone or approach someone is like the communication is as positive as a positive message you can send. If they're still twisting it into something negative, well, that doesn't. Maybe I'm not responsible for that.
No, you're pointing at something really cool about NLP, which is a lot of questioning of assumptions, or at least realizing when you are making an assumption. It's questioning, do you actually know what that person's intent was, or are you assuming it? That's a big thing in it. And there's a point of NLP that I feel compelled to bring up for whatever reason, but it's one that stuck with me about how even the language that you use with yourself and with others can have a big impact.
Yes. How you talk to yourself, right?
And this is a weird example, but for whatever reason, I've found it really helpful for myself. Instead of saying, I don't have the time to do X, you change it to, it's not a priority for me. So instead of saying, I don't have time to work out, you would say, right now, working out is not a priority for me. And maybe that example could be a little shamey, right? Like you're trying to get people to admit that you don't care enough about working out, that it's not actually something that you're limited by. But I have found, especially in interacting with other people, to be very honest about, it kind of gets you out of that victim mentality. And I want to be very careful about using the word victim mentality, because that is something that can be used to dismiss people and kind of gaslight them. But what I mean by that is I feel more like a victim when I say, I don't have time to do this. It makes me feel...
Just you, personally, you feel like that, right?
Yes.
Like no one else...
This is how I feel. I feel when I say, actually, I don't have time to hang out with you. I'm making myself sort of the victim of my life and my circumstances, instead of owning the fact that actually I'm just choosing not to, because there are other things that are more important. And for whatever reason, that just feels more empowering for me to say. It also feels more honest. It takes me out of the mindset of being someone who is kind of like apologizing, trying to people please, always out of lack. It puts me into more of a set of beliefs that indicate that I have control over my life, which is that, no, actually, this is a choice I'm making, as opposed to this is something I have to do.
Okay. When should you say you're sorry?
When you really are. When you really are sorry. I say sorry way too much, so I'm definitely at fault here.
Okay, I don't want to ask the same question again, but like because I've thought about this a lot. I've talked with a couple of people about it, whatever, and I feel like I've come to this idea of when you should say you're sorry.
Okay.
It's when you have something to be sorry for.
Right.
Otherwise, I'm going to say I apologize. And to me, I apologize means something different than sorry, but they probably mean the same thing.
Okay.
But in my mind, when you say you're sorry, and I don't say you're not really sorry, but it's not something to be sorry for.
Mm-hmm.
Like I bump into you. Well, I guess you'd say you're sorry for that. When you're just in somebody's way accidentally and you say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like for me to go, not that I apologize for being here, but I'll say like, my bad. I apologize. I was looking at this or something like that. For me, that's a positive affirmation versus saying I'm sorry when I'm not. But I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes. The thing that immediately comes to mind is relationships. And I'm in the head of a couples therapist a lot of times. This is difficult with couples in particular, which is someone's feelings got hurt, but the other person didn't intend it. Right? Maybe you make fun of your partner and you think you're being joking, but they take it personally and their feelings are hurt.
Do you know what I do?
What?
I just immediately, when I see that shift in the person, and especially with my girlfriend, I just go like, hey, I say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Please don't take that personally. I didn't mean it that way.
Right.
Right there in that moment, I just stop it.
Right. Good for you.
But that doesn't go over well all the time.
Yeah. I have an edit though. So first of all, she already took it personally, so it's too late.
Yeah.
So you can't tell her not to.
Okay. Fair.
So ideally, you would get a better idea of, teach me what just happened. Teach me what happened to you. What's going on for you right now emotionally? Right. This is varsity couples communication, but here we go. You get curious about how they actually felt and you remove yourself from it. You're not thinking in that moment, oh, but I really didn't mean to do that, or they misread me. No, that's not what's important. They're having an emotional experience, and as their partner, you want to be able to understand it. And then when they describe to you what they're feeling, whether it's, I feel sad, I feel like you weren't considering me, I feel belittled by you, whatever it is, you could say you're sorry. But that trips people up because they're saying like, well, I can't say I'm sorry because that's not what I did, or that's not what I meant.
I would say I apologize.
Okay. And that's perfectly valid. I think another way to approach that, rather than saying I'm sorry as in taking the blame for it, you could say, I'm really sad that you feel that way, or that makes me sad that that's how that landed.
Okay. Now let me ask you, in couples therapy,
yes, when
you've kind of coached that, tell somebody to do it.
Yeah.
Does the other person like go, well, you're not really sorry then? Like, you know what I mean? When you go, you say, hey, I'm sorry you took that way. Uh-huh. And they go, oh, but you're not really sorry.
Well, and maybe they're not.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not. And that's the thing. It's and if you are the couples therapist, you have to be really emotionally attuned and figure out, are they really sorry? Because I didn't buy that either. And then you actually go into it with the other person and you say, something's stopping you from being able to be sorry. Usually it's a defense. And that defense is something that needs more exploring too. So yeah, we could go on about that forever.
Okay, so coming out, I guess we're out of the pandemic, right?
Yep.
Like
I would say so. My mom's still worried about it.
I mean, but we have to be close to the end, don't we?
I would feel like we are, but you never know.
Okay, so what's the biggest thing that your couples have been like battling, working on? What's some hot button subjects that you're really having to work on with your couples?
Oh,
is this regular old stuff, or is there some new stuff that like
pandemic oriented stuff?
Yeah, or you could just tell me stuff. What's hot what's a hot topic right now in couples therapy that people are worried about?
I wouldn't say worried. I think a hot topic that probably just wasn't on the table until recent years is ethical non-monogamy. People seeing that as a...
What does that mean? Okay. Ethical non-monogamy. Right. So it's agreeing with your partner to explore other relationships, and there are a million different iterations of how that could look, whether that looks like we both date people separately, or maybe we invite someone into the relationship, or... So you're seeing more of this?
more of that, more couples who are turning to that as a option in their relationship. And I don't want to cast dispersions on people. I think more people are seeing it as maybe this will fix our problems. There are also people who genuinely treat non-monogamy as an orientation, and it's genuinely how they are, and they have managed to create a really healthy system with their partner. What I'm seeing more, I don't see a whole lot of non-monogamous couples. I just see couples who are wanting to explore that because maybe nothing else has worked. So that they're using it as like, maybe this will be the thing that fixes the relationship. So that's, I would say, newer. I think.
What's the success rate on that?
No idea. I don't think it's very high. And it's not because, look, this is my metaphor that I came up with that I'm very proud of. I see ethical non-monogamy, and we're talking about what makes it ethical is there's full transparency, full communication, that both parties are really agreeing on the terms.
Really full
transparency?
Like full transparency?
Well, it's whatever transparency they want. Maybe they don't want to know details, but they want to know when you're going on a date and with whom.
Okay.
Right. That they are in agreement about what the terms are, and they are not going outside of those terms. That's not what most people are doing, because it's really hard. So what I've sort of conceived of to explain this to couples, especially when they come to me being like, hey, there's no intimacy in our relationship, so we're thinking about exploring non-monogamy, I'll say non-monogamy is like the black belt of relationships. Yeah. It's the highest level you could possibly think to achieve. That doesn't mean it's bad. It means it's really cool. It means you've got a lot of skills, but we're at white belt. So we're not going to go to black belt until we've done green, yellow, and I don't know the colors, but we're not going to go there until we've worked on this base, right? Because you're not telling them it's wrong or that you think it's immoral. Some therapists might feel that way. I don't personally, but it is a very advanced setting. So we're not quite there yet until we figure out this stuff being the foundation, the relationship. Ideally, I think non-monogamy is something you should explore from a place of real security within your relationship.
Yeah, it feels like this is what non-monogamy would feel like to me. I'm killing this regular relationship.
Yeah.
I'm killing it. I mean, we don't fight. Everything is perfect and great. Couldn't get any better.
Yes.
And then I want to go like to level 100.
Totally.
You know what I mean? So, okay, this is my question.
Yeah.
Okay, so if a couple comes to you and they want to explore this, why don't they just break up? Why do they want to stay together? Like because they still like having sex with each other, or they just like each other as friends, or like, what do you think is?
I think they're desperate. I think they really do want to stay together and they love each other. It's just that they haven't found anything that works. And I think that for couples in distress, look, maybe I'm biased. I don't think any of us is born knowing how to do relationships really well. And it's not something that's taught. And yet being in a relationship is absolutely a skill set. And I think a lot of us just don't have that skill set. So they're coming because, first of all, most people, I don't know, not most people, but couples therapy is kind of like a last-ditch effort for most couples, which is a shame. In younger couples, you're seeing them coming to therapy earlier, which is great. We love it.
Yay.
Yay. Because you can do a lot in the early stages of a relationship. Some people are coming to therapy as like, we're either getting divorced or we're going to therapy kind of thing. So for them in their minds, they've tried everything. But I would say, couples therapy would be like, in my mind, that's one of the first things you should try. That would be my advice to everyone out there.
Okay, let me give you an example real quick.
Yeah.
So as a personal trainer, I would, get new clients, introduce them to training, to try to get them to train, right? And I would get this line. This is what they tell me. They go, I'm going to go work out by myself for a while, and then I'm going to see how it goes, and then I'll come back to you.
Right.
And I always go, so what are you doing right now?
Yeah.
Because that's why you're here with me, right?
Perfect metaphor.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so with couples.
No notes.
Same thing, right?
Same thing.
Yeah. Okay, let me ask you this. What would you think about this idea? I just thought about this. So say you met a guy.
Yep.
Okay. And now you're 6 months in a relationship.
Yep.
And to me, in my past history, 6 months is the part where it's like, well, we're going to sink or swim, or shit comes out the closet or whatever. Mm-hmm. And at that 6 month point, you're like, well, I still like this person enough that I want to date them. Should they start therapy right then?
I think so. If they're having issues that is putting them at that sink or swim moment, yeah, come on in.
It wouldn't hurt to do a couple.
No. Not at all.
Just see.
Not at all. I see some couples who have like shockingly few issues, but they just want to come in for like a tune-up. Maybe they're about to get engaged. They don't know whether they're ready for that step. And then all the way to couples that have, really intense conflict.
I think that it's hard to not be biased in an argument for yourself. You know what I mean? Like, like you're not like, man, I hope the other person wins this argument.
Yeah. That's everyone's blind spot, including mine.
Right. So I think that my girlfriend and I have talked about like getting we don't have a lot of problems, but we've talked about like seeing somebody and talking, just because it would be nice to have a third party person to kind of referee and have a perspective and have knowledge around those kinds of things. We think we know everything, because we're interacting with each other, but we're not looking at always from the outside perspective of ourselves and the other person.
No.
So it's helpful to have somebody referee it.
100%, especially when you're emotionally activated, which even if you're having kind of like a low stakes argument, most of us are emotionally activated, which is making it very, very difficult to see the other person's perspective, because our prefrontal cortex, as we all know, it's like the part of our brain that does the thinking and the empathy and the rational, all the things. If we're activated emotionally, angry, sad, stressed, it typically gets shut off a little bit. So when we're in an argument with our partner, we're not able to access the part of our brain that allows us to use empathy and see the other person's point of view. You look pensive.
Well, I was thinking like, these are some of the things, you tell me what you think about these things. I want your opinion.
Okay.
So these are some of the things I do in a discussion or argument or whatever you want to call it that makes you feel good about yourself for not calling it fighting, whatever. Just like when you have to have one of those.
Yep.
These are my goals. I'm going to try to listen as much as I possibly can. And if that requires me sitting for 30 minutes and like giving the person the space to feel like that they can get all the things out that they want to get out, then that is what I need to do.
Wow. And
then a lot of times, like say that, I get in one of those and I might not even have anything to say after a good rant. I might want to think about it for a while.
Yep.
And I might want to be like, well, I need to think about it, or maybe we could talk tomorrow, or like give it some space.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And I find there's a scale, and like there's like losing your shit and like whatever this is over here. And like, sometimes I nail it and sometimes I not. But the closer I get to like trying to do those things.
Yes.
One, the more I find out whatever we were talking about was stupid, and I just really don't like, after like kind of hearing about, kind of talking it out a little bit, I'm like, well, there's not really anything to it. And then like two, like I'm less likely to get emotional. I get time to think about it. I get to think about what I want to say and being thoughtful about it and using NLP type ideas of being positive about what I'm saying and stuff. And so I don't know. And it feels so much better to not like, I feel like, if you lose your shit in a discussion, you just gave over any leverage, power, anything that you had, even the person listening to you. Like you lost your audience, you lost everything.
Yeah.
And so like if you want to stay in that conversation, you need to maintain a very acceptive, like a place for someone to want to talk to you.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
That's true. And
so I asked you a question. I didn't really even ask a question, I don't think.
It's a nice statement. I mean, that sounds great. And I think if you're also like allowing yourself to take space in your partner and you are able to do that, that's a great thing. I think for some couples that's really hard, taking space. Once they've ratcheted up their emotions, it's really difficult to like let it lie. It depends. There's usually, in most relationships, there is someone who really wants to get to the bottom of things and fix things, and there's usually another partner who runs away and wants to hide.
Okay, so could you say, would this work? The person that like, we can't go to bed angry. We got to fix everything tonight. If that person, if they gave their partner just a little bit of space, that they would stop running and actually come to them.
Oh, yes. But that's what's really hard to escape from. Because here's what you'll typically have in that dynamic. In fact, you see this dynamic played out in some fashion in 80% of couples. There's a runner and a chaser. So the runner, the person trying to resolve this before we go to bed, is going to pursue, kind of chase after that more avoidant partner. And the more they do that, the more avoidant that partner is going to get. However, the avoidance of the other partner makes the running partner, the chasing partner, I should say, very anxious. And so it's really hard when they see their partner drawing back even further. It's almost impossible for them to give them that space. It feels really hard. So they go after them even more. And then this person runs away. And this is how couples really get into intense conflict.
Like cycles, right?
Yes, cyclical conflict, yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if this, why do most chasers chase and why do most runners run?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to assume in this weird way that a runner and a chaser get attracted to each, like,
yes, they do.
You don't see chasers dating chasers.
Not usually. And runners versus dating runners, the relationship will fall apart because there's no investment.
Okay. So why does a chaser kind of usually chase and why does a runner run?
So runner and chaser usually usually correlates to attachment styles. So a chaser is usually anxiously attached and a runner is usually avoidant. So what those things mean, I don't know how much we know about attachment styles. It's a very hot topic these days, but due to experiences in our childhoods, we can either be anxious, we can be avoidant, or we can be securely attached. There's also combinations of anxious and avoidant. And so if you're securely attached, it means, you were well attended to as a child, you were loved, you were given freedom and space and all these different kinds of things. And you were given the perfect balance of freedom and affection. For an anxiously attached person, usually what they received in childhood was intermittent affection. Sometimes their caretaker would be right there with them, giving them a lot of affection. Sometimes they would be unavailable, either physically unavailable or emotionally. For an avoidant person, typically what they've experienced in childhood is a total lack of nurturing and attention from their caretaker, meaning they learned at a very young age that they have to depend only on themselves, that other people aren't safe, and that they have to be completely self-sufficient. On the other hand, an anxious person learned, sometimes I get affection, sometimes I don't. I have to game the system to figure out how I can get that affection every time. And it puts them very on edge and it really keeps them in pursuit. Whereas an avoidant person has given up entirely and thinks, you know what, affection's never coming. Fuck it, I don't need it. So when those two people get together, their interests are at odds, especially when they're emotionally activated. An avoidant person might look like they're not emotional at all. It's more men than women, typically, but there are certainly anxious men and avoidant women. But they will look like there's not much going on for them emotionally. Usually they'll look like they're a wall. Their partner will say that he doesn't care. There's no getting through to him. He just leaves. I'm nothing to him. What's going on behind that very calm facade is an incredibly activated person, someone who's actually quite emotionally in distress. It's just they have learned that their best chance of regulating is to detach and go off on their own. Whereas the anxious person is always trying to get that affection. It's always trying to secure it. So those are kind of the two different, those are sort of the two different attachment styles. I've also noticed, and this is maybe my own personal theory, I've also known another thing that can make someone avoidant. Maybe the scientists would disagree, but I can also find that an overbearing caretaker.
I was going to ask that. Yeah. Someone that's just like on them all the time. Yeah.
And here's why that's really, it's smothering, it's suffocating, right? It's too much. And there's a layer even beyond that, which makes, for instance, if your caretaker, when you were a child, was using you for their own emotional validation, kind of smothering you with attention and affection, the message you get from that is, I'm not seen for who I am. I'm not seen for my own person. I'm something that someone else needs. And that's a very painful thought, actually. You're not being seen for you. You are being used for someone else's emotional needs. So when an avoidant person smells that in a partner, when they pick up on that needy energy of, I need this from you, kind of harkens back to that overbearing relationship in which they were truly not seen and not validated as their own person, and it's very repellent to them. These people do tend to find each other, though.
So, does does the chaser? What is it called?
Chaser is anxious. Yeah.
Okay. Are they usually codependent?
You could say that. Codependent's a tricky word, right? Because it's so nebulous and broad. But typically, yes, what we conceive of as codependent is more likely to show up in an anxious person. If you think about the original definition of codependent, which came out of Alcoholics Anonymous, that the codependent was the person in partnership with the alcoholic who feels the need to kind of control and obsess over the partner who is using. So that's where that term was born. But that is kind of an anxious behavior, which is to focus so entirely on one's partner and trying to control and modulate their behavior in order to make you feel safe. That would sort of kind of go hand in hand.
Okay, so are you familiar with highly sensitive people?
Yes.
Okay. So in the scenario where someone's the avoider or the runner, right?
The runner. Avoidant runner.
Whatever.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay. And their parent is overbearing.
Yep.
My first question, could that change or alter someone to become a highly sensitive person, or was that person already probably born that way?
Oh, I don't know. See, I actually don't know that much about hypersensitivity.
Okay, well, so we'll just skip on from that question. Okay, but so we'll say this: a person is like highly sensitive.
Yes.
What does that do you think, to that person? So now you have someone that's overbearing on top of them, and they're very, very sensitive to all things.
Yes, I would say avoidant people are already quite sensitive.
Okay.
I think they are very sensitive to the feeling that they are being controlled, or the feeling that that something is being asked of them. And they might read that into otherwise neutral circumstances. So an avoidant person could be with actually someone who's very securely attached, but might read into something as innocuous as someone being like, oh, this is my boyfriend. And feeling very strangled by that or controlled by that. So in that way, I feel like they tend to be very sensitive to like little changes in their environment. I don't know how much that applies to like sensory stimuli, but I don't know. Something tells me there's probably a correlation, but I don't know. I can't say.
Oh man,
we're all sensitive too. I don't know. I feel like I'm so sensitive. People are sensitive.
I think in any given situation, people can either be sensitive or become sensitive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that I have become less sensitive in a good way.
Yes.
Things I didn't need to be sensitive about.
Yes.
And it made me more balanced. And it also made me accept the things that I am sensitive about and be okay with them.
Yeah.
Which I think is good, right?
Yeah. You need a balance. You really do.
I mean, but I think that's the struggle constantly, right? Is the balance.
Always, with everything.
Yeah.
Copy paste.
Okay. Going back to what we're talking about. So I got a mess. The chaser. I'm forgetting all the fancy words. Anyways, so like we'll say that like someone is a chaser and they're attracted to someone that's a runner.
Yep.
Right. Is the runner probably pulled in or attracted to the chaser because everything feels familiar and they don't realize that it's not necessarily a good familiar. It's like these things about like growing up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like they're getting back into a cycle with a relationship with a person that's like their mother or their father or whatever.
Yes.
They don't realize they are,
yes.
but then they get into it and they're like, ooh, like I don't like this. Like, why do I not like this? Because I really like this person because they really like their parent.
Yeah. Well, it feels like home.
Right.
So when you first meet them, when anxious and avoidant people first get in relationship, it feels very magnetic because something about it feels so familiar in this way that it's like, wow, this is where I came from. This is mimicking something in my blueprint. So it can feel very compelling when you first get into it. I also don't think that all avoidant anxious relationships are doomed. I think there is a way that both can really kind of learn and grow from it and have some actually corrective experiences. But both partners have to want that.
Well, if you're the active, or Jesus, I can't get this right.
It's okay. You're doing great.
Avoidant?
Anxious.
Okay.
You can say runner and chaser. That also makes implicit sense, right? I feel like that makes more.
If you're the anxious person, I mean, if you can find a way to be less anxious,
yes,
lean into that and hold it.
Yes.
Like you can't do it for a while and go, well, this isn't working.
Yes.
It needs to be a permanent change.
Yes.
And you give your partner that space, probably that's going to give them room to come to you and be less avoidant, right?
Are you a runner?
Like a runner?
No, are you the runner?
No, okay. So I would say I was a chaser. Oh yeah. Like I was one of those people,
Okay.
like we're not done arguing, one, until I say we're done, but
Yes,
then two,
yes.
like we're not going to bed. You know what I mean?
Yes. Okay. So that's why you're talking like that. You're really kind of reflecting on yourself and the changes you need to make. Because I would say yes. And a runner also needs to do work. A runner needs to learn how to stay and engage and not run away when things get hard, but to be able to interact with their partner. And their partner also needs to learn to regulate their own nervous system and show up in a way that makes the runner feel respected. But both partners have work to do. But you're right. I'm also a chaser. So yes, a chaser. So I know, right? It is a journey of doing a lot of self-regulating. It's a lot of self-soothing, letting yourself calm down enough that you can like let the other person breathe for a second because they need more time than you do in order to interact. I mean, that's the big work that chasers have. Runners also have work though, which is they have to learn how to not disengage when things get hard.
Yeah, I think.
And we're also talking about extremes too, right? Like
yeah.
Right, because an extreme avoidant would look like an alcoholic. It would look like someone who disengages from reality and numbs
actual
out.
life.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Yeah. So avoidance can take all different forms. It can really have you exit out of life.
I think this is what happened to me. I spent my whole life chasing, just like doing that, right? And it didn't work.
Oh, no, it definitely doesn't work. Not in the long term. It can get you into a relationship, but it certainly blows up a relationship.
Yeah. And so, after my divorce, it kind of felt like the world was ending and I'm having all these epiphanies about whatever and this, that, and the other. And I was like, well, the next time you get an opportunity to be in a relationship, you probably want to do things a lot different because so far this has not worked.
Yes.
And so then what I started doing was just the opposite of all my instincts all the time.
Wow.
Which I don't know if that's probably like driving a car with no steering wheel, but I was like,
it sounds badass.
I was like, what I'm doing is not working. So when I think of an idea of something I want to do, I'm just going to do the opposite. So, I would have the feeling to want to yell.
Yes.
And so then I just wouldn't. I had the feeling to want to talk. So I would just stop talking. I would have the feeling of wanting to, chase someone down through the house, arguing with them. Right. And I would just stop myself and go, that's not going to be success. You've already done that before.
Wow.
And like,
wisdom.
Well, but, like that's not, you don't always reap the rewards immediately of that decision.
Your partner has to learn to trust you.
Well, and the other person has to realize that you're doing things differently.
Yep.
And if you do them differently, like one time, that's not enough to prove to somebody. Like, like if you do see somebody do like some amazing backflip off a diving board, you're like, I need to see that again. You know what I mean? Like, and like people kind of think, well, I've done it once. I did it the other day.
Did it, so now you owe me, which is also a very chasery thing to say.
It's like, like I've already shown you I can do it.
Yep.
No, showing me you can do it is doing it all the time.
Yes.
It's actually changing your behavior. That's showing me you can do it. And like, there's definitely times where like I fuck up, but I try not to beat myself up and I try to immediately own it to my partner and go, yo, I fucked up there. That's kind of the old me.
Yes.
Hopefully the rest of my record lately has shown that I'm really trying hard.
I love this.
If you do, if that person's really honest with you and if you've really been trying, they'll probably go, yeah, like I understand. But like it's also like, don't make that a habit.
Yep.
Don't get in the habit of doing that. You know what I mean? Like it's cool. You fuck up this one time. Well, let's not get carried away, and it needs to be a priority for you.
And it's hard work. I think you're pointing to it. I mean, I'm really resonating with everything you're saying. And it's just, it does take that. I got to question my instincts here. I have got to learn to regulate myself. I'm going to keep saying that, but it really is about self-regulation. It's not about giving them a stone cold, and I know you're not saying this, but to people listening, it's not about performatively giving them the cold shoulder or performatively pretending that you're okay. It's actually learning how to be okay, which is so hard, but it's also incredibly rewarding when you learn to do that.
There's a difference between like, I tell me if you think this is true. There's a difference between like pretending you're okay and being okay.
Oh, yeah.
And when you pretend,
people can tell.
people can tell, yeah. But they can tell because they can feel it.
Yes.
It's not something they see.
Nope.
So when you perform and show them you're okay, that's a bunch of bullshit.
Yep.
When you're okay and they can feel you're okay, they're like, oh, fuck. Yeah. Like, he's okay.
And then they'll come towards you. It's crazy, like a cat.
Well, like, imagine if you're trying to like get an animal to come to you, you're like, blah! Like, you know what I mean? Like, that cat's gonna be like, yeah, I'm not going over there. But if you're just calm and you sit down, the animal comes right to you.
Exactly.
And it's really, I think that's one of those like power of like laws of power, the law, 48 law power, 48 power.
You got it.
48 laws of power. Anyways, I think it's that's kind of one of those. Of just the idea of how, the book is a lot about like how you interact between like other people and what those spaces look like. But again, like in the wrong hands, someone could really abuse somebody. But when we were talking about all that before, I remember I wanted to ask you, like, you don't have to teach a person with heavy narcissistic tendencies how to manipulate people.
No.
It's instinctual.
No, yeah, that's correct.
So like when you put information out like NLP or the power of 48 or whatever it is, like that person could probably read that book, but they're probably going to read it and go like, I know all this shit. You know what I mean? Because I will tell you, as someone that was feeling myself for a really long time, when I read that, I'm like, oh, like I did that to somebody. Like, oh, I manipulated people by saying this in the way.
Totally.
Or, you know what I mean? And now when I say something, generally given a compliment or whatever, like I mean it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I mean everything I say. And I think that people feel that differently. And it's the difference between pretending and then like actually feeling it.
Yeah. I do think so, though, someone with malicious intent would, for instance, Keith Raniere of Nexium, would really study those things while also reading like Mein Kampf by Hitler. Like they do study manipulation to perfect it, but they have the urge already. Yeah, that's true.
Have you ever been drinking and bought something online?
Surely, yeah.
Because like your inhibitions are down, you're like, oh, of course I need another pair of black heels, right?
Yep.
Okay. So people that maybe tend to be like empathetic, or that care about other people's feelings and don't want to let people down and stuff.
Yep.
They probably carry around a great amount of guilt. Not justified guilt, but like they feel guilty for the things they can't do and they can't control.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of people drink because of that. But I don't think they realize they're drinking because of guilt, because they're trying to numb all the things that they can't control and the anxiety. Definitely anxiety. Like people definitely drink to calm anxiety, I think. But I think there's a certain level of like when people feel guilty about the things they can't do, it's like pain medication almost for their.
Yeah, I mean, drinking is so many things. I'm actually not drinking right now.
Me neither.
No way.
High five. Yeah.
Wait, when did you start?
Well, okay. This is what I'm defining as not drinking.
Okay, yes, let's talk.
Okay, so say you were like, hey, I want to have a rosé on the podcast. I would have a beer with you. Okay, I would still call that not drinking. Because I'm not going to have probably another beer until the next podcast,
right?
Or a dinner with friends, or like I'm not drinking at home. I'm not going out to drink. When I go out to drink, I don't drink.
Yep.
But in these weird occasions, or if you go to some restaurant and they're like, man, we have this new drink called the whatever, and I'm like, give me one. I got to try one of these things. So I call that not drinking. But
you're drinking like one drink at a time.
Yeah. Like if we were to do the podcast, I would have probably one beer.
Yes.
That's it.
That's impressive. That's already impressive.
Well, it's just more of this kind of like I don't want to miss the moment.
Right.
But I don't feel a need to drink at all.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I don't. And even when I'm drinking that beer, it's more of like cheers. Yeah. Like, hey, we're doing something.
Right.
Then I'm like, oh, I'm drinking.
Yes.
Because you could give me a non-alcoholic beer and I would drink it the same way.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
I might be getting into that. I've never actually tried it. I might get into non-alcoholic beer.
Okay, do you want some recommendations on non-alcoholic beers?
Yes, I do.
So
Sponsored? No.
no, not yet. I'm hoping. There's Austin has a beer that's like a non-alcoholic. I think it's like Athletic Brewing Company or something like that. I'm probably butchering that.
Okay.
But then there is this thing called Fourth Tap.
Okay.
And the name of the beer is called Sun Eater.
Okay.
And it's like a summer shandy.
Sweet.
Oh wait, those are alcoholic. Never mind. Those are gluten free. Those are gluten free. No.
I'll get one right now. You're like, don't do it. Don't do it.
Don't do it. No, you're ready sobriety. But there are. I got other ones. Like Budweiser makes a great non-alcoholic beer.
Heard is it Labatt? Like, what's the famous one?
Oh, like O'Doul's.
O'Doul's. That's it.
But O'Doul's is good.
Is it? I've never had it.
Like and then like everybody makes like Miller Lite has non-alcoholic beers.
Okay, I gotta go shopping.
There's a larger section than It's kind of like it's the new gluten. Not drinking is the new gluten.
It is the new gluten. But yeah, man, it's wild not drinking. I've you just once you stop, you realize that you are probably drinking more than you thought.
Yeah,
because you're realizing all these little tiny moments where you're like, I never perceived myself as being a like chronically heavy drinker. But as I've stopped, I realized how many opportunities, like just how much I'm like, oh yeah, that's going to change this gathering or this dinner with a friend or whatever it is.
Do you know this is what I noticed. So like I'd gone like probably about a month without drinking. Like I just hadn't, right? And I went out and I had maybe, I don't know, 4 drinks or something like that or whatever. And this is what I noticed. Man, like I was sleeping really good. And I noticed how bad my sleep was when I drank that one time. Because, I had drank often enough. You're tired and you have a kid that like you didn't really think about your sleep.
Think about,
But to be off alcohol for that long and then drinking, that sleep was shit. And I woke, I was like, God, like I'm tired. I wasn't hungover.
Yes.
I was just tired. And I was
I didn't even realize I was probably so tired.
Well, you
just
didn't sleep.
Realize it.
You just sedated yourself.
Yep.
And I was just like, man, I'm not. And that was part of it. Also, I read a book called Alcohol Lied to Me.
Ooh.
It's a good book.
I'm reading a book called Quit Like a Woman, which is very good.
You like it?
It's so good. I mean, this is where I'm going to be so annoying and like a new proselytizer. I've been sober for like 3 weeks, so let's not get excited. We'll get excited. Yeah. But it is just saying, it's really challenging the notion that it's like no amount of alcohol is good for you. It's just, there's no such thing as moderate drinking.
Okay, I'm going to throw this is from my book. I'm going to throw this out here. Okay. Alcohol is poison in really small amounts. Ethanol, really small amounts that your body can tolerate. It's rotten fruits and vegetables.
Yep.
But it is, don't get it twisted, it is poison.
Yes.
It's just like if you were to take some other poison and water it down and put it in a drink, you would be drinking that. So it is poison. You're putting poison into your body.
I know. And Hey,
and I still had a beer the other day.
I did it. I don't know. But to your point about sensitive people, I think that sensitive people are much more prone to addiction. And I would put myself in that category of people. I've never experienced what, the DSM would call addiction, but I've noticed that tendency in myself. I actually, maybe we're getting way too full circle loopy, but I do feel like there's also something to an anxiously attached person that is more likely to seek substances. The tendency to seek something outside yourself, I think, in order to fix something that's within you.
How would a chaste person, avoidant person, look at me,
there you go.
How would they use alcohol? Like, I'm sure avoidant people use, you already kind of said though.
Yeah,
but
to escape. I would say to escape. This is Hannah Shaper's opinion. This is not like the be all end all of what therapists think. This is
you're my expert, so go ahead.
I'm just absolutely spitballing and saying words that come to my mind. In my hunch, I think avoidant people use it to escape or to numb out. And you could say that for anyone, right? I mean, including a sensitive person is maybe tired of feeling, so they want to numb out. But how I sort of conceive of it, using myself as an example of someone who is anxious or chasing, that someone like me is drawn to drink because I'm trying to fill something inside myself that feels empty, which to me feels at least...
Could it be that guilt? Could it be...
Guilt, a feeling of, not good enough, a feeling of incompleteness, that I need to be more, which to me feels a little different than numbing. It feels more like I'm trying to fix something. I'm trying to like plug up a hole. and maybe that, I don't know, maybe that's way too subjective and metaphorical, but it's a feeling of like, I need this because I'm not all right, versus like, I want to escape and numb out. I don't know. And maybe those things are similar, but to me, they feel different.
I think that, okay, is it possible that you could suffer from more than one emotion?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like at a different time.
Yeah.
So maybe sometimes it's like this and sometimes like that. You know, maybe these are all things that you feel, and just at different times you feel different ways and you drink accordingly, or, you know, whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
You know?
I mean, people drink for all different reasons. The same person drinks for different reasons.
Right.
At different times.
Yeah. I'm going to say this on mic. I really wanted to tell you before. When you left here the first time, I was like, she's never coming back. Like,
Why?
I was like, because I was like, I talked to you. Like, even when I went back and looked at the video, I was like, I talked too fucking much.
I thought we had a great time.
I mean, I had a great time, but when over analyzing myself and the person, you know,
as one does.
Well, and I think I expressed this when you left. I was like, I was just really excited.
Yeah.
To talk about this stuff. And so I just kept talking. And so my goal this time is to not talk as much.
Okay.
And just, yeah, it's going to happen.
All right.
But I'm trying to get better. Anyways. So do you have anything you want to talk about? Is there anything you're doing right now that's cool?
I mean, I'm doing a lot of therapy.
You're doing a lot of therapy?
Well, I'm giving a lot of therapy.
Okay. So you're doing a lot of therapy on other people.
I'm also getting therapy. Let's be clear. I'm always getting therapy.
All right. So, and you said that you got off social media or just specifically Instagram?
Specifically Instagram, but I'm not posting things, if that makes sense.
But you're on it.
Not Instagram. No, I watch YouTube videos.
Okay.
But I don't TikTok, I don't Instagram, and I don't Twitter, which I never did really tweet. But I don't do any of the super dopaminergic social media.
Okay, how come?
Well, the easy answer is that it wasn't making me super happy to do it.
Okay, fair.
That was a big one.
I thought that maybe you had read something about the dopamine, blah, blah, blah.
That just, if I'm being very honest, that just reaffirmed a choice I'd already made, which is that I realized that when I'm on this, I'm not happy. And I think I was also putting a lot of pressure on myself to create content, like soft exploring what it might mean to be a little bit more of a public presence, which is something I think I eventually want. But at the time, I wasn't going about it in a healthy way. And I was just realizing I'm like putting forth all these efforts to create these little short videos that get swallowed up by the algorithm. And I'm really letting how many views and likes I get determine how I feel about it. And it just felt very taxing. And I felt that I was becoming very self-obsessed in a way that I wasn't enjoying.
Okay. So
that was a big answer.
No. And like, I totally can relate to that. Like,
Yes.
Absolutely. But like, I was just thinking about this yesterday. This is where I'm at, right?
Yes.
So I put videos out on the internet all the time that don't get any views or any likes or anything.
Which I think is the most badass thing.
Okay, thank you.
We can get into that later, but I truly think that's an amazing way to show up. I wish I could. That's my dream, is to someday create things without letting how little engagement it gets affect me.
Okay, so do you want me to tell you how I did it?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So let's go through the things that I know will get likes. Pictures of my kid.
Yep.
Pictures of my face sometimes. Funny picture.
Yep.
Somebody like died or something, and I'm doing a eulogy or
something emotional.
Something that evokes some sort of emotion in a person.
Yes.
Okay. And so when I realized that, like, I want to post the art and what I think is cool.
Yes.
And go, this is how maybe I view the world through my eyes.
Yes.
And whether you like it or not is irrelevant.
Right.
Because if you're following me, you're getting it. Mm-hmm. Right. And like, sometimes I couldn't even tell you how many likes I have on posts or anything at any time, because I just post it and I just leave. And I leave it out there in the world for people to discover and find. Now it might be only like 5 people. But that's 5 people that thought that what I did was interesting, and that feels more like a genuine like hopefully if someone took the time to like it, they genuinely did because they thought past, it's a baby, it's a picture of my dog, whatever. Right. And they're like, wow, that was interesting.
It was also you creating something that you enjoyed creating and are interested in versus trying to guess what someone might like and therefore probably not enjoying the creative process at all, whether it's a post or a video or whatever, right? Like you're not going to enjoy the thing that you're trying to seek approval for. It's just you nerding out, and then whoever happens to like it is going to like it.
I am 100% sure that like my friends and people fucking hate my Facebook. I am positive. I'll tell you why.
What do you do on Facebook?
What I do on Facebook? I promote the podcast.
Okay.
I post videos of things that like I have said or thought that I think are maybe thoughtful or helpful for other people to think about. Like I tell people all the time, if I don't post another video, if I don't post anything else in Fake World ever again, my life changes zero.
Yes.
Like there's no change in my life, right? And so I put things out that I think that maybe someone will watch and go, wow, like I know Scotty, I'm friends with him. I struggle with something similar. Oh, that's a good way to think about it, just like I do with like my regular friends. But I think that comes off as like, I mean, I'm kind of podcasting all the time.
Right.
But this is also a really big part of my life currently.
But you also really enjoy it.
Yeah, I like just like if anyone like it's just I think of it like this. If I was a painter,
yep,
and I posted a picture of my painting up on Instagram or Facebook, like I'm just sharing my painting. And so when I do a video, I'm just sharing my art that I'm making.
Yeah.
Now, you could argue that me babbling on about shit is not art, but
yeah,
I feel like this, well, but I feel like this, just like there's people that can play music and there's people that do poetry and there's people that do spoken word or whatever else it is. There are people that motivate or inspire you just by their words. Like, you know, like my favorite example to think of is just like for me, like Matthew McConaughey, because when you hear his accent and his voice inside your head, you kind of just, you know, you're like, yeah, like everything's cool, man. You know, and so
that is what I think.
So why couldn't you be that for somebody? I mean, you know, like, I think this is going to sound real shitty. We've all seen that person on the internet and you're like, oh man, you should be making videos. And
right.
That's not how you TikTok or whatever that means or whatever. And there are times where I'm like, am I that person? Am I that person making the videos that people are just cringing at? I just don't even care.
Someone's always cringing at something.
Yeah, like I mean, like 50% of the people I hate in the world right now hate me. I don't even have to look them up. They're already there. You know what I mean? So I'm not worrying about them too much. This is all new though.
But this is good though. I think what you're saying also is it doesn't seem like you're really pursuing it for any other end rather than the end. I mean, it is an end in and of itself to post things that you like and to share your thoughts. I think where it gets sticky and where I was experiencing some trickiness for me was I was actually trying to get something out of it, whether that was coaching clients, whether that was a following. I think I was going after something beyond just, I'm going to post this because I find it interesting. You know what I mean? I was trying to achieve something, which is always going to put this kind of pressure on it.
It's like this. It's like if you get into music because you want money and chicks and rock and roll and drugs or whatever, you're really getting into music for the wrong reasons.
Yes.
Because most of the people that are successful in music, if they did get chicks and drugs and rock and roll or whatever it was, in the beginning, though, they were in it because they loved it, because they grinded it out and blah, blah, blah. And that's how I feel about like my social media when I put it out. I don't get very many likes and things, but when someone comes along that wants to interact with me or wants to hire me to coach them in some way, then they know exactly what they're getting.
They know you're a good fit.
Yeah. There's no, like, it's going to be exactly like that. I thought about this the other day. It's like, everybody claims to be so unique, yet they post the exact same damn pictures online.
Yep.
the same booty poses, the same food, the same trips, the same whatever. And so it's like, well, how different are you when you're like, because like, that's what they think they're supposed to do. Well, what about what you want to do? What do you want to do?
Exactly.
I want to make my Instagram look like a checkerboard. I want everything to be black and white. I want it to be really simple. I want to use song titles and lyrics from songs as my writing. That's my whole Instagram in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Nobody likes it except for me.
I'm sure other people like it too, but
I'm sure somebody does, but like it's 5 people.
Your goal is to not be liked, and I think that's probably why you've been able to sustain it.
Everybody likes being liked.
True.
But I understand that if I try to make you like me, but what I'm selling is false goods, not only are you not going to like me, my attempt to make you like me is also not going to work.
Right.
So back to the beginning, I guess.
And it's also just exhausting. It's exhausting to try to figure out what people want and to produce it for them.
The coolest people and the coolest people I've interviewed so far are people that seem to, for the most part, minus that little small insecure part about yourself, have no problem like being themselves. And it's very inspiring to me, you know. And some of these people are way younger than me that figured it out.
Ooh.
And I'm like, man, you're way ahead of the game. Don't forget this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, don't forget like how this feels to be like this. Cause like I just hit it and I'm like, I ain't letting this go anytime soon. Anyways. See here, I was like, I'm not going to talk as much.
It's probably my therapist vibe though. I think I encourage people to talk.
Yeah, but I
just
mean,
by my aura.
I think, okay, so like, it's like this.
Yes.
This is so stupid. When I'm out like in the real world, I'm the person that everybody wants to tell their problems and talk to.
Yes.
But when I get in the presence of like a master like Jedi of like
definitely not a master Jedi.
You know how to work me in a way that like no people don't work me. You know what I mean? And being a good listener and processing and thoughts and
it's so nice to be worked.
Yeah, I mean yeah, it's like I haven't been in therapy in a while. This is great. You know what I mean? Like
here we go.
Yeah, awesome. So you're off of Instagram.
Yep.
And it's because you didn't like about the way it made you feel. This
Correct.
is what we established?
Yeah, that's it. And then you find all kinds of great, confirming evidence that, of course, social media doesn't make you happy. It's an addictive, kind of empty substance.
Okay. Do you want to know, like, my impression of your social media?
Sure.
Like, this is what I thought.
Yes.
Okay. I thought that, would it be fair to say that you have a quirky vibe?
Very quirky.
Okay, great. So I was like, these are so fucking cool because they're so quirky and like she's playing these characters. And I felt like it was like stuff that like everyone, I shared a lot of your videos.
That's
like,
so nice.
I don't know if you noticed, but like, that
was you. Someone was sharing them.
Yeah.
Like,
So I was like, man, she's really nailing this. Like I thought it was great. You know what I mean?
That's very sweet.
Yeah. Well, but that's real. And so it's weird that you had this whole different internal dialogue
right
about it when I was accepting it from a really like great place.
Yes. And I think I really enjoyed the stuff I was making. It's not the content itself that felt icky. I think it was the pressure I was putting on myself to keep doing it and to do it to the point where it would gain traction. I think with any endeavor, you have to have an enormous amount of patience. And so if you're not enjoying the process or you're not doing the process for its own sake, you're going to burn out on it. I think I read a book once where it was talking about, to use your example of the rock and roll star, you shouldn't become whatever it is you want to become because of the perks. You shouldn't become a rock star because of the girls and the drugs and the fame and the money. You should choose what you want to do based on the least enjoyable part of that. And if you can enjoy the least enjoyable part of what you do, then you're doing something right. So he was saying, if you can enjoy practicing in a dirty room and hauling amps up and down stairs, and it's really about those tough day-to-day things that are very unglamorous that you really have to be in love with if you're going to do anything that's going to have staying power. And so I think about that a lot with my job as a therapist, that I like even the worst parts of my job. And I think if you want to do anything of substance, you have to find a way to fall in love with even the unglamorous day-to-day parts of that. And I don't think that was the case for me with making these videos. I was immediately going for the validation or whatever it was.
So, book recommendation.
Yes.
And this was from Jason, like my audio guy, recommended this book. The book is called The War of Art.
Ooh, I already like it.
So, and it's like, I read it on audiobook. It was only like 2 hours, but the concept of it is that if you're making art, if your job is to make art and whatever that is, like there are going to be days where you just don't feel like making art.
Yes.
But there's like days where I don't feel like going to work either.
True.
You know what I mean? So it's not like that changes anything. But when it's something you enjoy and then you don't feel like doing it, like, I think there's a weird juxtaposition inside your brain about
Yes.
that, you know, because when it's your job, you're like, I don't like doing it. It's like, well,
Obviously, it's your job.
it's your job, you know what I mean? But when it's something you love and you don't like doing it, it's like weird.
Like, this defeats the purpose of me doing this.
Yeah. So like doing the podcast, I mean, I can't even tell you how many times I'm just like, God, I don't want to make, I got to make,
Totally.
no, I got to make 3 intro videos today. I got to make 2, I got to put these together. I got to put this video on the internet. I got to do this. And I'm like, this is a job.
Yeah. It
Like,
really
you know what
is.
I mean? And those days, like I get through those days, and then ultimately what happens if I wait long enough, somebody will come along and go, hey, like, I watched one of your videos and that's really cool. I like what you said. Or they'll go, man, I saw that video and that was like awesome. Or I listened to your podcast for the first time and that was great. And then those days get me through all the other days.
Right.
But the rest of the time I'm farming self-validation just out of everything and going, why do you love, you know, like, what is this doing for you? Like, I'm constantly
you have
having
to keep reminding yourself.
validating myself. And it's just like, it's just not as cool. It's not as cool to validate yourself as it is to have
But
someone.
that's a really important skill. And the fact that you've had a podcast that has lasted years, which most people don't get past their first like 3 episodes, right? I think you're in a statistical minority.
I think the statistic is 70% of all podcasts end after the first season or year or whatever, after the first,
right?
They have a run and that's just it.
Yeah. So you're the exception to this rule. And I think your self-validation, while it is probably unsexy and less fun than getting validation from other people, is obviously played a role in why you've been able to sustain it. I think anyone who's able to sustain a creative endeavor for years at a time I just have an immense amount of admiration for that.
This last segment is brought to you by HeyJustBe.com. I believe that achieving balance in the mental, physical, and metaphysical aspects of your purpose by incorporating learning, serving, and creating can transform your life into one that you truly enjoy living. Want to know more? Go to www.heyjustbe.com. So how I usually wrap things up, which we've already done before, is like how you take care of yourself. Are you doing anything new and cool to take care of yourself? Are you still doing, what are we doing, like MILF workouts?
Oh yeah, my MILF workouts. No, my MILF workouts got stunted because I threw out my lower back.
Ugh.
So I've been doing...
We should talk about it.
I know, it sucks. It really sucks getting old. I'm really just doing cycling, like stationary biking, walks, and a little bit of yoga, a little bit of PT here and there.
Okay, this is just my professional opinion.
Yeah.
If you're having low back problems, you need to get off that bike.
Really?
Yeah.
Probably.
I'm sorry.
It's just fine. I'm sure you're right.
It's not because of your back. It's because of your hips. It's what it's doing to your hips.
Is it too tight?
In sitting, like in that sitting position. You already sit too much as it is.
Okay. Yep.
I'm telling you are because I'm sure you don't. I don't know if you stand up when you do therapy.
I don't do standing therapy.
Yeah, but so like you're just killing your back from that sitting position.
Okay, good to know.
So that's just me.
All right. I'm sure you're right. It doesn't feel like it's the best. It's just something to burn off energy.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. I was just saying, like, jump rope.
Yep.
Way better.
Ooh.
Go swimming.
Ooh, I do love swimming.
Or rock climbing. I
do love swimming. Okay.
I mean,
we'll try.
All those things are way better than cycling.
Yeah.
Sorry, cyclists.
That's okay.
All right. So anyway, how we're going to wrap this thing up is when I was texting Hannah to like come do this, I was like, you got to see the shirt that I bought.
Oh, yeah.
So I have my shirt and the shirt says, empathy is more rebellious than the middle finger.
Yes.
And I really related to that.
Mm-hmm.
So to wrap this whole shindig up, I want to know what you get from it, what you think and what your interpretation, and we will chit chat about it.
Well, empathy is something that a lot of people say they feel, and that's probably true. But I would say that our culture is not one that values empathy. I think our culture...
Look at it as weak, right?
Yes. I think our culture values rugged individualism. And that is what is rewarded by capitalism. I mean, if you want to make a lot of money in this world, you have to be fairly individualistically minded. So I think if we're thinking about rebellious as that you are rebelling against the norm, I would say empathy is certainly against the norm, that it is something very different than what most of us are doing. I was actually listening or watching this YouTube video, a woman saying kind of how everything, even in the self-help kind of therapy lingo, is like, put yourself first, choose you. And all of that is good in its own way, but it's this intensely individualistic rhetoric of putting yourself first and prioritizing yourself which is, made popular by the wellness industry, which is all about that. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I do think it is very rare that we would hear the same amount of vigor and verve being put into take care of each other, feel for one another, keep other people's perspectives in mind. I think we can all agree, like, as a culture, we're very, very divided and not seeing anyone else's point of view.
Yes.
So it is rebellious.
Okay, so this is what I think.
Okay.
This is how I interpret it. When my ego and narcissism was more involved in my life, I was still an empath, but I might have been like, using that to feed myself and to feed off others and things like that.
Yes.
So
covert narcissism.
Yes. I read this thing about like that, like, that narcissism, like, it's not, we don't have a bunch of narcissists running around. It's just a bunch of people with narcissistic tendencies. So to call them a narcissist is kind of like, there's only certain people that are real kind of like crazy narcissists, right? Anyways, so I'm trying to avoid, that's all I was saying. Anyways, so what I took from it was when you can truly be empathetic, like to another person without any anything fulfilling for self, like just be empathetic and graceful to another person. And especially when they're being a dickhead. It is better than any middle finger, any fuck you could ever get anybody to be so self-assured and confident about just being a good person, even when that other person's not.
It's such kindness.
It's a great feeling, not a feeling of like I'm winning, but a feeling of like I am putting my best self forward.
Yes, and I'm dismantling what would otherwise maybe be like this moment of conflict.
Well, I also have this thing where you could help me with this. I feel like when you interact with another person, there is a push and pull. And like either you're going to influence them, they're going to influence you. And if it's a really good interaction, you probably do both.
Yes.
But if it's a poor interaction, someone could be trying to force their feelings and things on you, and you have to be willing to stand your ground, walk away. You have to willing to be your own force and at least hold your ground for who you want to be, or influence them in a positive way, hopefully, right?
Yes.
And so like that's like my new goal. Like
nice.
Is that like, I do want to be influenced. I am influenced by people, but I don't want to be brought down or influenced in a negative way and have who I want to be as a person go away, or just give it to them. Yeah. Because like no one should want to do that. And referring back to what you're saying about, like you were talking about, like take care of yourself, like rhetoric or whatever.
Which is important, has a place.
No, I think taking care of yourself is great, right? I mean, I think that the concept of you got to put your mask on before you put on anybody else's.
Totally.
Right? But don't take that shit for granted. Don't abuse it, right? Especially if you're in a relationship with a partner. Like, for the most part, like my girlfriend let me go work out anytime I want to. I'll go, hey, can I go work out? And I'm going to be gone for about like 2 hours. That's my time, right? And sometimes she'll go, hey, can you not go today? But she doesn't abuse that in a way of like, just like her being like lazy about something or whatever. Right. Like she really needs me.
She'll only say that if she needs it.
Yeah. And like, that's a good space to be in. I don't know why I kind of got to that, but like that's how I take care of myself. And then when I come home, like from working out, a lot of times I am like, where's this kid? Yep. What can I do? How can I help? Like I am reset for my partner.
Yes.
And that feels like a positive way of doing that. Like if I abused that and I was gone to the gym for like 4 hours, my partner would probably feel like taken advantage of.
Right. And that demonstrates the put your mask on first before helping others. There is the before helping others, I think, that often gets left out, which you are pointing at by saying like, yeah, I put my oxygen mask on by going to the gym, and then that actually does physically allow me to take care of my family. Yeah.
And so whatever self-care looks like to you is like great, but it shouldn't probably harm you, and it shouldn't probably harm anybody else.
Correct.
Or, cause distress to anybody else. And if it does, you might want to like check out and see how much self-care that is.
Right.
Like example, like this is such a stupid example. If you think self-care is going to the strip club,
yep, Exactly. Or drinking a bunch.
Yeah.
Totally.
Like, what about your partner or somebody you have obligations to or whatever? Like, how's that affecting them? Like, you're like, well, it's not hurting them. They're not there. But like, it's like, well, you're hurting your relationship between the two people or whatever, right? So like, that's not self-care.
Correct.
Strip clubs are not self-care.
That's what we all need to talk about more.
Well, and coming back for a second time.
Yes.
Did you have a great time?
I did.
This is so awesome.
I did have a great time. I really did. But you have to ask me your 6 questions or whatever it is.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get to that.
Oh, we're gonna get there. Oh no, this was great. I feel like this was delightful.
Okay, so are you coming back again? Because like my plan, this is my plan that you don't know about yet.
Okay.
Is you're coming back every season.
Perfect.
However many seasons I do. So I mean, you might be off the hook next year.
Okay.
Or you could be on the hook for like another 10 years. Who knows? Like we'll find out. Yeah. So if you want to, you can push your mic forward. I'm going to ask you to give me a hug.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because you get the hugs, the good vibes. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.